Most of us are already familiar with the helicarrier from the Marvel Universe seen in the movie Avengers. But what if I told you that such a flying aircraft carrier is going to be a reality soon? The U.S. Navy might become synonymous to the U.S. Air Force. Aircraft carriers will soon become aircrafts, just like the aircrafts that take off from them. These aircraft carriers would be able to fly as well as travel on seas. This isn't a new project. It has been around since the time of the World Wars, and now they are actually going to become a reality. Thanks to the development in technology, this project has received the attention that it deserves, and the U.S. is aiming to revolutionize flying carriers. Flying carriers are gaining attention at this time mainly because of the complete dominance of American sea-based aircraft carriers today. In fact, 25% of the world's aircraft carriers belong to the U.S. Their deck space is huge. It is more than double that of all other nations combined. In addition, the members of the lead US.S. Ford class of these aircraft carriers are far more lethal than every other aircraft carrier in history, and some of the upcoming features may prove this fact. 2 Bechtel A-1B nuclear reactors, which are considered to be the most cutting-edge engines created for use on water, power the U.S. Gerald Ford. Due to this, the carrier would need to be refueled once over its entire 50-year operational life. These engines make use of the everlasting nature of nuclear energy. This actually means that US.S. Ford can run for 25 years at a time without refueling. The peak speed of the carrier is around 30 knots. This supercarrier can access every country on the planet just in time to pay friendly visits to allies and wreak havoc on enemies. New sensors and processing systems are another feature of these carriers. US.S. Ford features the latest sensors, processors and weapons which are needed on an aircraft carrier to maintain that balance of intelligence and lethality. Unlike every other aircraft carrier in the world, the US.S. Ford features a single system for both horizon and volume search in the form of N-SPY-3 multifunction radar for X and S-band active electronically scanned array. It remains the most advanced radar system from the U.S. with enough versatility to handle surveillance, air traffic control, missile communications, and spot targets from miles away. Nearly 75 fighter jets and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, can call the US.S. Ford home at a time, which includes the Navy's favorite jet, the 5th generation F-35 Lightning I Joint Strike Fighter, whose development program remains the most expensive weapons development program of the Pentagon to date with a reported cost of $400,000 billion. Even though this program is extremely expensive, this fighter jet is totally worth it. It can do it all. This includes close air support, vertical takeoff and landing, and everything in between, cementing it as the modern go-to fighter for the Navy and every other department of the military. However, this was until the 6th generation F/A-XX fighter takes the center stage. When this happens, the US.S. Ford is already equipped with the technologies required to host, launch, and recover it. All of these and many other things combine to make the U.S. Navy the most undefeatable on the seas. Now, if an airborne version of them could be made, then it would make the U.S. undefeatable in the skies, which remains an ultimate goal, and many programs have been created to achieve this goal. Real flying carriers concepts are not as dramatic as the fictional helicarrier from the Marvel's Shield. They are as close as anyone has gotten in the last 100 years. In 1917, experiments were made with aircrafts that were slung under airships, which can also be called microfighters. These hanging aircrafts were used primarily to defend the airships. However, these airships went out of style, and many other modern flying carrier programs came into being, and each was unique in its own right. Boeing 747 airborne aircraft carrier is a concept which came into being in the 1970s. The U.S. Air Force was experimenting with the idea of converting one of its large aircrafts into a flying aircraft carrier full of parasite fighters that could be deployed and even be recovered in midair. The Lockheed C-5 Galaxy and the Boeing 747 were among the contenders for this role. Boeing took the lead when they correctly pointed out in their proposal that the 747 offered superior range and endurance when flying with a full payload of an impressive 3,000 pounds. The 747 would therefore be able to carry up to 10 microfighters at a time. Boeing would design the microfighters so that they could be small enough to be housed within the 747, along with an apparatus that would allow the large plane to carry the fighters a long distance, drop them wherever they are needed to fight, recover them after their use, and refuel them as needed. However, there were some uncertainties that surfaced, such as the fuel range and how the Boeing microfighters would fare against the advanced threats they were supposed to square off with. Sadly, the proposal never made it off the page of Boeing's report, but the report did establish that despite the challenges, the concept, although expensive, was technically attainable. The Lockheed CL-1201, staying true to their nature of pushing the limits, decided to go at a flying aircraft carrier, the size of a traditional aircraft carrier. This aircraft/carrier would weigh a literal groundbreaking 5,265 tons and stand as tall as a 14-story building. However, to get such a massive structure to fly, the design included a 1,120-foot wingspan with a 560-foot-long fuselage, which is nearly equal to the length of 2.5 Boeing 747s end-to-end. The Lockheed CL-1201 could, however, surprisingly be powered by only 4 huge turbofan engines powered by regular jet fuel to an altitude under 16,000 feet. At such a height, the nuclear energy from an onboard reactor takes over and can power the jet for a time span of 41 days continuously with even refueling or having to land for a second. In fact, the aircraft could maintain a Mach 0.8 cruising speed for this specific period and fly at around 30,000 feet up. This gigantic aircraft can hold a crew of 845 and can be able to deploy 22 multi-role fighters, maintain a hangar bay for repairs, but can cost billions of dollars. The cost is one of the major issues here in making the concept a reality. Another concern is the number of labor hours needed to produce and maintain. This must have contributed to why the aircraft never made it past the proposal stage, but to this day, its concept stands as a huge historical anomaly, which continues to inspire renewed attention from around the world. The B-36 Peacemaker strategic bomber was another aircraft that was intended to be upgraded to carry microfighters. To launch its microfighters would be the McDonnell F-85 Goblin, and it would house up to 4 of them. The B-36 was the ideal pick this time in the 1950s. Its size and massive weight, and its 230-foot wings would dwarf even those of the B-52 Stratofortress, and cement the B-36 as one of the largest aircraft to ever take to the skies. Its weight comes in at an astonishing 410,000 pounds, when fully loaded with fuel up to 86,000 pounds of weapons. Its massive size and range prompted the Air Force to consider to its use as a flying aircraft carrier, but that too would not come into fruition as the advent of mid-air fueling dramatically increased the operational range of all varieties of aircraft, and ultimately undermine the importance of the range of the B-36 Peacemaker. The U.S. has relatively recently been looking into a new flying carrier program since 2015. The United Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, has been investigating the prospect of using a modified Lockheed C-100 and 30 Hercules cargo aircraft to deploy and support X-61 Gremlin, which is an unmanned aerial vehicles as microfighters, and on completing their missions, these microfighters are recovered using a proprietary air recovery method involving a drogue-like receptacle and docking technique. The testing for these UAVs are being conducted at Dudway Proving Grounds with International Air Response providing the contracted C-100 and 30A. In January of 2022, DARPA successfully launched an X-61 Gremlin UAV from the bay of the C-130. If these air carriers get the required checkmark, these can be officially launched for the use of the Air Force, so that it can deploy drones from other ships while still outside of enemy air defenses. These would allow the drones to go and engage the targets before returning to the airspace around the mothership to be recaptured and carried home for service or repairs. However, these UAVs are still a work in progress. A lot of setbacks need to be removed before it can be officially launched. What do you think of these airborne aircraft carriers? Are they how you imagine them to be? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.